All right, so on that last video, I did rush a little bit to get it in under the wire that I'd like to do 15 minutes or less. So a quick summary here of the previous video then. All right, so first of all, you are going to have to learn to code. I mean, there's no two ways about it. You guys can see everything I code in, 99% of the time, it is MATLAB, full stop. Now, I really don't suggest people code in MATLAB. It's kind of a niche type thing. Most people, I suspect, if you were getting in from ground zero, would do something like Python. I'm not a fan of Python, but it clearly works and it's powerful and it's very popular and you'd have a lot of support. So you could do a lot worse than going to Python. A lot of you, if you did anything at all, you'd be more familiar with the Office suite. So you'd be using Visual Basic, macros, and the like. That's probably the easiest thing. It's not the most powerful thing, but it could work. And the reason why is you just have to gather the data and you have to test the data. You have to vet everything, and that just simply requires the ability to program. People don't do that, and there again, I don't know where along the line of failure that is, but that's somewhere early. They grab an idea that they think works and they don't code it. The other thing is, I certainly didn't gloss over it, but I want to make a point of it. There are so many available indicators out there. You're going to be awash with indicators. And you guys have all seen it because I know you've all done it. You use an indicator and that indicator has a couple different parameters you set. And now you start to do parameter setting optimization. So you'll do that on an RSI or a stochastic or whatever. And you'll just start to load them up. And I had mentioned that they were multiplicative. So we're going to get into that here as well. The other thing I didn't really mention, it's so obvious to me, sometimes I forget to mention it, and I noticed it when I did the review of the previous video. Things like the trend lines and that stupid wave theory, the 1, 2, 3 wave and whatever. Listen, the problem with that, and if you were a programmer, you would see it instantly, which is why so many people don't see the ridiculousness of it, is if you were forced to program that stuff, you would see the number of indicators you would have to put into that. And it is not at all obvious to most people, but it is to someone that was programming something like trend lines. The problem with trying to do a historical review of stuff like trend lines is you have to set parameters, which people that, like Two-Tick Nick and most people, they don't do. They just look at historical data and then they draw in a trend line. The problem is 30, 60, 90 days prior, that trend line would not exist at that spot. So your trend lines would be forever evolving in time. Yet when you set out to draw a trend line, you will necessarily just ignore all the trend lines with the same parameters that you're now using where they were then versus where they are now. You can't test stuff like that. And you can only do that is if you take one chart of a set of data that you choose and then you plot all the trend lines at the same time that would have been available at the parameters that you choose to use at the time you were actually trying to trade it, versus how you're just drawing the trend line fresh today as if none of those trades happened before today. And you see that a lot on that previous video with what Nick did. And you would see it for what it is if you had to program it. I have programmed automatic trend lines myself just to see if I could do it. It is not necessarily an easy task, but boy, you learn a lot when you do it and you see the folly in it. So that's probably a decent summary and some things that I should have mentioned that I didn't. So what we're going to do here today, actually, you know what? One more thing. I had mentioned a lot about capturing the fat tails and being in it and hanging on to a position. So something like that would be considered like a trend trader where you expect to be in a trade for a long time because that is the easiest route. Now, I just wanted to point out that most people like to live here. They like to live in here. These nothing burger moves, and there's a lot of them. Look at the normal distribution down here. There's a significant amount of space that you can live in up here. And this seems to be where a lot of people like to live. And that is more mean reversion type of trading. That's looking for a reversal of trend. And you'll notice that's what Nick does. That's what most people do. They can't get long, for example, because it's the easiest way to go. And they can't stay long. and they can't get back long because they've chickened out because they're afraid of their own shadow. And they got out, and the thing continued to trend. Right? That is where the easy money is made. And of course, no one wants to live there. They want to live up here. This is where I want to find the reversal. I want to catch the top of Apple, and I want to look like the hero, and I want to write it down. Listen, the evidence, the proof is in the pudding. All right? It doesn't work well. You have to be an extremely good trader with an extremely defined set of rules. There again, rules out every last person that lives up here. Every last one of you. Don't give me any bullshit story to the contrary, because you can't prove it, because it doesn't exist. You don't live there, so it doesn't matter if you had to find that one person in 10 million that does. So what? That's not you. There again, this is where Nick lives here. He's trying to always grab the short end of the stick, trying to look for those reversals. It's crazy, folks. It's crazy. You're going after the hard money. You want the easy money. Why do you think there's such a disparate difference between what my guys in my Patreon service did last year, 66%, and there was far more available, but that's what we did, versus the money-losing trash that Nick and a lot of people did? Forget about being positive. They lost money last year. Because remember, Nick was short since May of 2025. And did he ever complete the trade? Did he ever tap out, Uncle? No. All his work is properly vetted and shown to the public on TradingView? My ass. Where were all these times you stopped out? Let me see that mountain of small shorts that you did cumulatively that produced nothing but losses for 2025. How do you think there's such a huge difference between two different people trading the same market? It's insanity. That's like a 70+% difference. That's insanity for a single year. Well, that's why. Some people understand what makes a market tick and how you make profits. And we only get better with time. Those people that are already that far, you only are going to get better with time. And the whole rest of the has-been people, the people that spend oodles of time and waste decades of their life going nowhere, fooling themselves. That's where. All right, well, I've just barbecued half the time available here. So let's build this better mousetrap here. So I'm going to give you 3 parameters. Yes, 3 parameters. And we'll look at how actually big just that evolves into. All right, so what we're going to do, and I'm just going to give you the ranges that we're dealing with here. I'll fill in the blanks. Don't worry, kids. What we're going to do is look at this same market, to the S&P over the last 23 years. And I'm building the simplest mousetrap you're ever going to see. This took all of 5 minutes or less to think of, and a few more minutes in coding. So what we're going to do is go long when we breach a high of X amount of days. So our parameter is 20 days to 90 days, right? So, but this is the first parameter, a look back. We're going to go long when we breach between a 20 and a 90 day. We're looking at 2 different things here. So let's just look at this first one here. We're going to go long if we breach the 20-day high. We are going to stay long unless we have a stop loss of 9% from that 20-day entry, or if we continue to move up, we get a 2% drawdown. So that's pretty tight. So once we have a 2% drawdown from a high, we stop out and we stay out in cash until we breach, in this case, a 20-day high. And if we turn out and we buy the top and we never get a 20-day high, we are going to stop out with a stop loss of 9%. So the truth of the matter is this 9% really isn't going to come into play too often. All right, so we have a simple 3-parameter system. That's all we're doing. We're not snooping. We're not putting waves or trend lines or stochastics or RSI or Bollinger Bands. Literally, guys, could you get a more simple strategy to trade? All right, so what you see here is the market in blue, and the strategy in red, by the way, it's not mentioned here, but it's long only. So we're not even going to try to catch anything to the downside. We're just going to stop out. And as we come back up, if we breach those 20-day highs, we're going to get long again. And at that point, 2% drawdown from any new highs, we will get out. Now, That's as far as I'm going to take this particular strategy. There is a lot more to be done before you turn this into an actual working trade. But I'm showing you how simple it is to create something. Honestly, this takes, I say less than 5 minutes, but let's face it took me less than 30 seconds to think of this. Now, how much would we be snooping, or how well would we do? So obviously, this strategy was a clear winner on the surface. But how well would we do if I had chosen 3% or 25 days? All right, so that's where we get to the top side of this range of these three parameters that we would take. So what we need to do is to see how robust this strategy is. And we need to take every permutation and combination of our three variables within a given range that we would expect to be reasonable. Would it make sense to do a 365 day look back? Probably not, because you're not going to stay out of the market. And I say 365, but really these don't include, these aren't days, these are trading days. So you usually do 250 days looking at this parameter to be our 1 year. So would it make sense to not get back long until we broach a high of the last year? Probably not. So there's reasonable boundaries to put your limits at, a lower bound and an upper bound. So I chose a 20-day as the minimum look back up to a 90 days. And there's no sense looking at 21 days, 22 days. Let's just do it in 10-day increments. That would give us a good idea. And we could make the trades, we could view the trades, so we could look at just varying this look back and keeping everything else the same. But really, you want every combination thereof. Still a stop loss. Stop loss of 4% might be reasonable, all the way up to 9%. And what about the drawdowns from the high? 2% to maybe 4%, that type of thing. So if you look at all of these available worlds that I call it, you get a universe of combinations. And what you need to see, and this will prove the robustness, or at least begin to prove the robustness of this trading idea. Are you data snooping a little too much? Is your 20-day moving average perfect, but your 40-day moving average an absolute nightmare? You need to know, are you standing on the precipice where you've data snooped so well it looks perfect, but if the future goes just slightly wrong, it's an ultimate disaster? You need to know that before you trade. So we have this available universes, is what we call it here, and we plot all the permutations and combinations thereof. I have in my 3-parameter setup, where I vary those 3 parameters within a minimum and a maximum, I believe you're looking at 512 different universes. And this is very small. My computer is pretty damn powerful. It actually pauses and hesitates as it builds 512 different universes. It's crazy. So what you see here is, I'll just explain this for you. 1.57 cumulative log return is what the market did. The very worst is 109, and the very best is 229. Now, what this is down here, which you'll notice is in the middle of the pack, it's actually where the highest one was. So going in almost 900 data points, you had no idea, because it was the middle of the pack, that it would actually end up being way up here as the winner. And you don't necessarily want to pick the winner. You don't. There's a lot more to it than that. So I can tell you, I have to go look at my chart here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, we just pulled that up. I can tell you on a chart which one of these 512 universes this guy was. And it should be of no surprise, I hope it wasn't. You might not be able to guess the look back, but you can probably guess the stop losses and drawdowns. So as it turns out,